Issue 48. The only thing willing me to read this issue the day after the first is the hope that all this depressingness will be resolved. Sonic gets sent to the prison, a more top security one than the one Fang broke out of, naturally. And all the while, Uncle Chuck is the only voice of reason here, with him and Rosie at one point being the only sane man saying that Sonic couldn't have done it. Also, I'm really annoyed that they keep trying to emphasize the fact that supposedly Sally is dead. How stupid do they think the audience is? Do you think they'll actually believe they would go through that decision and stick with it? And after Sonic wastes the audience's time with a pointless recap, it turns out he's put in a helicopter with Sleuth the traitor dog. I love how angry he gets at seeing him, although it's annoying that he isn't able to attack him because of his chains. Thankfully, the people flying the plane have a problem. A SWAT bot shoots down their plane. And after a group of SWAT bots finds people, the plane unconscious but annoyingly for Sonic still alive, Sonic escapes the plane and destroys the robots, being completely serious and devoid of humor for a perfectly good reason. Just like in SA2, he's been framed for a crime he didn't commit and his reputation was ruined. Of course he'd be in a bad mood. Of course he'd take things seriously. If there's anything to break the cocky hedgehog's ego for a little while, it's that. That's why I don't get people complaining that Sonic Adventure 2 was too serious and too angry and quick to fight Shadow. Shadow got him framed and ruined his reputation. Why wouldn't he be like that? The only problem I have with this awesome escape is a text blurb that, "Now Sonic knows the true meaning of war." Well, yes, Sonic is fighting a war against Eggman. This line is often made fun of by fans, and even I think it's a little silly. And I'm someone who absolutely hates when Sonic fans refuse to accept any kind of seriousness in the stories. After all, for a good overarching story, Sonic needs a balance. You need lighthearted stories to ease the tension and have downtime to get you attached to the characters as people. And you need epic adventures with real tension and stakes to get you invested in what's going on and excited about things. Sonic is based on action movies. It can't work without both of these kinds of stories. If you stick to one, then you're just going to get tired of that tone. Draco reports to the king that the plane transporting Sonic had crashed, and that Sonic had escaped because of it. Once again, the king looks very suspicious by smirking evilly that Sonic will have to be hunted down like a dog. But fortunately for my not being enraged at the story, it's Jeffrey who's sent to hunt down Sonic as bounty hunter instead of making it funny and a horrible out of character moment for the Team Nice Girl. I don't know if I'll ever let her live that down. At least here, compared to issue 40, Sonic's friends don't look like unsympathetic treaters throwing a tantrum at him supposedly disobeying them once and getting himself the worst possible fate of Robotniks. Here I can understand their reactions, and at least a few of them don't buy into the bullshit, but they're all still being idiots by not immediately assuming Sonic had been framed. You'd think they'd jump to that conclusion first because it'd be easier on them. Sonic runs through the deep mud because he's clever enough to realize that he has to cover his footprints to prevent police and SWAT bots from tracking him. Sonic takes a rest, naturally emotionally exhausted from the bad day he's had, and he tells the audience that Uncle Chuck had insisted on trying to see Sally's medical records, but the king had gone all the way to suspiciously refuse an investigation on his own daughter's death. I guess the logic he wants people to think that he's going with is that he doesn't think it's necessary because everyone saw what happened to her. But I think what Chuck means is that he doesn't actually buy that Sally's been killed, and wants to see her full medical report. It was pretty suspicious that at no point was anyone allowed to see Sally's body, or told what her injuries were, on screen at least. You'd think that all the freedom fighters would get suspicious the minute they were told they weren't allowed to come see her one last time. If the revelation is that the so-called king has been hiding Sally who isn't dead all along, or something like that, then I'll completely forgive this plot point because that makes perfect sense and is far less grim. Uncle Chuck had proven his loyalty and faith in Sonic by telling him in his visit to prison that he was allowed to do for some reason, that his campfire revealed that there is a traitor, but it can't be Sonic. Meanwhile, Bunny and Antoine are in the rain sneaking around whispering just outside the knothole huts, and Antoine, I think either jealous or suspicious, asked why the king had a private audience with Draco and Jeffrey but not them. Draco had never been put in the king's confidence. And Antoine also points out that while using binoculars, that during Sonic's judgment, why did Draco keep his distance from the wolf pack? Basically, Antoine had proven himself smart enough to realize that Draco is up to something. This gives me some more respect for him. In Draco's house, with Antoine and Bunny listening, we see Draco... Wait, why are there Why is their window open so that they'd be able to hear them? Why is their window so easily heard through? That's a really terribly made window. Anyways, we see Draco telling his girlfriend happily that the two of them are going to become dukes from what they've been involved in. And his girlfriend, as I expected from her shocked look earlier on, says she wants no part of this, and ends up telling Draco that he's hurting her arm. Huh, an abusive boyfriend is something Sonic related. Things are getting pretty rough here. We've had it implied that Shara was the abusive girlfriend of the Eraser Jin in Secret Rings, with Eraser Jin probably being very manipulative, pressuring her to do things and having no problem trying to kill her. But this is the first time we've outright seen an abusive relationship on screen in something Sonic related. Draco says that with any luck, Sonic and Jeffrey will eliminate each other. Yeah, that's a lot of luck. Logically, either Sonic would keep running away from Jeffrey at Sonic's speed to avoid killing him. The idea that Jeffrey could ever keep up with him for more than a few seconds is laughable. Or Sonic would end up defeating Jeffrey. But Draco's talking as if they're both equally matched. He's really deluding himself to think that things will work out. I like how Bunny and Antoine both look shocked at him saying this. Sadly, by following Draco, Antoine and Bunny get immediately grabbed by SWAT bots, with Draco calling them rank amateurs, saying that Jeffrey was right about all the freedom fighters. Okay, what? I can understand him saying that about Sonic, because he has a fragile ego and doesn't want to admit that someone clearly way more capable than him is better than him. But could he really think that about all the freedom fighters? Even Bunny? Maybe Draco's just saying that to rile them up. My big problem here is that not only do these SWAT bots, grab them out of nowhere before they can see them in time, which feels like a diabolic ex machina. I mean, how would Draco know that he was being followed and to tell the SWAT bots ahead of him to hide? Were they being that loud behind him while following him that he'd know he's being followed? But my biggest problem here is that Bunny gets carried away by the SWAT bots ridiculously easily, without immediately using her super strength limbs to fight back. Excuse me, but if I remember correctly, Bunny was once grabbed from behind by a SWAT bot in that feminist story. And do you know what she did? She effortlessly freed herself and defeated it. This is some serious major wimpification of her, trying to have me believe she's at the same level as Antoine. Maybe she's just held really well and tightly, but still, couldn't she just, elbow the robot? I mean, she could just elbow the robot with her super strength robot arm, and that's gotta do something. Plus she could bend her leg back to kick it. Both of them are being threatened to be taken to Down Under, with Draco being in league with Robotnik, as well as having a private audience with King and genuinely believing that he'll be made a dupe by him. Sonic is woken up by a rumbling outside of his cave that reveals to him that Jeffrey and his men have found him. And after Jeffrey intriguingly reveals that there is a Tasmanian devil racing Mobian as an excuse to go hit alone, it's also revealed that the reason they found Sonic's location so fast is that Jeffrey had thought to bug Sonic's shackle with a tracking device. That's pretty smart of him. Sonic and Jeffrey start fighting each other, and we cut back to the so-called King sitting at a desk with his fingers interlocking in a very suspicious, villainous manner. Seriously, I can only assume that everyone familiar with the King is just assuming he's acting differently because of all that time he suffered in the Zone of Silence. Because otherwise, why wouldn't they get suspicious of how he's acting suspicious every single time he's on screen? By the second panel of this, he says that he thinks the freedom fighters have a general lack of ability, saying there's been too much fighting and too little progress. Lack of ability from people who saved you from the Zone of Silence. Yeah, this is pretty suspicious too. Based on what we had seen as the King before all this, I don't think the actual King would act like this. He seemed too soft for that, even calling himself magnanimous. So the King says he'll reinstate the position of warlord in his realm. Well, if he's an imposter, he did his homework, as he actually knows there indeed was once a position of warlord in Acorn's kingdom. You'd think that'd be too scary a title for him. Robotnik shows up with the force field shield that immediately protects him from Rotor's huge ray gun blast right away. He then destroys Rotor's giant ray gun that was only meant for emergencies. That was a waste. That's all it ever got used for. You know, Rotor, there is such a thing as being too careful. Eggman attacks Uncle Chuck, saying that this explains his best laid plans being foiled. and starts laughing maniacally. So basically, Eggman found Knothole, and supposedly because the king called him out here to be a warlord against Eggman himself. If this doesn't get everyone suspicious of the king, I'll be shocked. But yeah, Eggman found Knothole this early in the comic. Well, this shouldn't be too big a deal. They can at least find a new location to build it in afterwards. So I'm not sure if they'll be able to send out an evacuation signal for people now, although Tails can run really fast. So if he doesn't leave the room at super speed and do that, I'll attribute that to his own incompetence. Especially since, I mean, he's just one person. Why can't he just run out of the room so fast that the Swap-Outs won't be able to grab him in time? Now they're acting like this is a big shock, and it kind of is, but I have to remind you, there's been so many times that I've asked how the hell Eggman doesn't know where Knothole is at this point. How did he know where to send the TV signal to communicate with Sonic in his underground hideout in the Sonic CD adaptation if he didn't know where he lived to send it? How didn't he find the huts above ground in Knothole with satellite imaging from above? Or worse, from just sending those flying invisible cameras he uses for plot convenience monitors to comb through every inch of the Great Forest? It's not like Knothole's being hidden by a magic spell. It's not like Knothole's being hidden with a spell that would, like, force someone to get lost in the woods, or force them to, like say a spell that would, while they're walking towards Knothole, magically teleport them to another part of the woods entirely. That would have been a perfect explanation as to why Knothole hadn't been found yet, because it's literally impossible to go into it. Although I guess he could map out the perimeter of the area where you'd walk and be teleported, because his robots, when they've been teleported, they would probably have tracking devices in them. So he'd know that the coordinates would change, like, immediately, wouldn't he? So he'd know where Knothole was from that, too. The only reason this idiot didn't find Knothole right away is because he didn't try hard enough. Literally all he needed to do was either destroy the whole forest, or send an entire army of Swap-Outs combing through every inch of the place. And if he's worried about Sonic stopping him, do it at night. And after Jeffrey and Sonic fight, saying that they both loved Sally for no reason, Sonic jumps away from him, and for fuck's sake, the story ends without any of the huge problems of earlier being resolved. Well, at the very least, this was a better read than issue 40. The main and only story of this was written by Kent Taylor and Ken Penders. And again, the story arc is definitely the best the whole Sonic's been framed story has ever been. Sonic's friends are unsympathetic or punishing him over something they shouldn't even be punishing him for. They have a much better reason to think Sonic did it, and the story differentiates itself from issue 40 by Sonic breaking out of the helicopter that was taking him to a prison and going on the run for the whole story, rather than being all about him going on trial and then proving himself. It does make sense that Sonic would do this rather than put up with life imprisonment, especially since if he wasn't fighting Eggman, the world would be pretty much screwed. And you'd think that everyone would realize this and get that they can't get away with doing this to him. Antoine earned some respect from me by figuring out Draco was a traitor, and Bunny earned some by staying with him instead of running off. Although she promptly lost some respect by not being at the Swap-Outs who were holding her like she's proven she could do before. I'm intrigued at how their eventual fate is going to be, what exactly the king will be revealed to be as to explain how he could call up Eggman, how the whole Knothole situation will be saved, and what Draco and Sonic are going to do next. I'm still very impatient for this overly depressing premise of Sonic as a fugitive to be over though. At least when SA2 did that, they had Sonic's friends be fugitives with them and immediately know that he was innocent, so he didn't feel alone. But I'm not nearly as frustrated with the story arc as I was with when Mike Gallagher, of all people, was out of his element writing the darkest story in the comics so far.